Hello, my friends. Coming live. Wow. That was a long delay. That was supposed to come on when I was live. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with the computer. I don't know what's going on with the internet. What's going on in this world at this point. I am being attacked. I am being attacked by the social media oligarchs. I'm being attacked by Satan. I can see that I'm on, but I'm clicking the button and nothing's happening, and then I was just stuck. So I'm going to have to just dispense with my intro and get right into the offering of the natural. Wow. I'm so sorry. Everything. Satan is trying to do everything to throw me off with these shows, especially when I'm speaking truth, when I'm speaking about God, when I'm speaking about anything. It is cracking me up. Hey, thanks. That is the Lion of the Overcome Nation over at Viseo. Thank you. I'm very red today. So at least I'm not wearing the Defund the Democrats that I wore apparently 3 days in a row, as was pointed out by Hedia Maramati the other day. I don't even know what to call her, because there's some discussion about whether we should say boyfriend or girlfriend. And I was told yesterday it's the woman I'm courting, and so I guess I'm the courting master or something like that. I am not sure what I'm supposed to be doing. Have you been having one of the... None of the technology. I don't know what's happening. It is very bizarre. Hey, Paul Byer, nice to see you. I appreciate you watching and watching yesterday. It was very timely that you come on yesterday and we talked about. So let's get into the devotional. I'm not going to go into everything necessarily about what it is that I learned. Hetty and I were here earlier this morning. We read the devotional, which she likes to go through together, and her insight on the subject matter. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about it later on. I'm going to go into more detail with her later on, not on this show, but in a future show, hopefully this weekend. We have quite the busy weekend, but I do want to bring her on. I think that her insight on what it is that she knows about Islam and Muslims and all that information in regard to Abraham and Sarah and just so much information that I was like going, oh my gosh, where have you been? Where have you been all my life? I need to know this information. It was outstanding. I learned so much today in our discussion. She has so much knowledge in this area. But let's go ahead and get into the devotional, and then I'm going to share a message from last night's service at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, about this very subject that we're going to be talking about today. And I've noticed, and I'm not sure why, I've noticed a lot of the information, or not the information, a lot of the devotionals last couple of weeks have been about sin, and Hetty and I have been just laughing like, well, are we ever going to get away from the subject matter? But really, I guess most everything that we have to discuss in regard to what it is that we do in our daily life is that we're battling sin, and so it is a subject matter that is of great concern and great. We have to acknowledge it. We have to discuss it and be aware of it constantly, because it's constantly coming into our world. Hey, Roy, nice to see you. And so let's go ahead and get into the devotional, and I'm going to add it to the stream there, get rid of Roy, and not really. He's still on here, just his message. All right. So, oops, I love this picture too. Does anybody know what mountain that is? I don't know. It's not Mount Hood, because Mount Hood normally has snow on it. I'm not sure where that picture comes from, but I would like to know if anybody knows. All right. The offering of the natural. Now, I struggled yesterday with the word natural, and I understand what it is now. Because why? Because Hedia Maramati explained it to me. Now I get it. It is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by a bondwoman, the other by a free woman. This is, oh my gosh, the what I learned today from Hedia was just spectacular on this subject matter, and I cannot wait to bring her on so that we can discuss it. She just, again, has so much knowledge in this area. So the devotional in regard to this subject, Paul was not dealing with sin in this chapter of Galatians, but with the relation of the natural to the spirit. Now, the natural, I've learned, I'm going to come back to my camera for 1 second. And the reason I was having so much trouble is because I did not relate it to our will. And the natural is related to our will in regard to our mind, body, and soul. That is us in our natural habitat. And that is why he uses this word natural. I don't know why it threw me off, but we had to try to figure out what does he mean by natural. But it is us in our natural existence, in our natural habitat, who we are as people. So in the natural, in who we are, it is our will. So replace it if you want to with the word will. Our personal will, individual will is what it's talking about there. So oops, I switched and didn't switch it down here. Here we go. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. So let me start all over again. Paul was not dealing with a sin in this chapter of Galatians, but the relation of the natural to the spiritual. The natural can be turned into the spiritual only through sacrifice. Without this, a person will lead a divided life. Why did God demand that the natural must be sacrificed? God did not demand it. It is not God's perfect will, but it is his permissive will. God's perfect will was for the natural to be changed into the spiritual through obedience. Sin is what made it necessary for the natural to be sacrificed. Abraham had to offer up Ishmael before he offered up Isaac. See Genesis 21, 8 through 14. Some of us are trying to offer up spiritual sacrifices to God before we have sacrificed the natural. The only way we can offer a spiritual sacrifice to God is to present our bodies a living sacrifice. Romans 12:1. Sanctification means more than being freed from sin. It means the deliberate commitment of myself to the God of my salvation and being willing to pay whatever it may cost. If we do not sacrifice the natural to the spiritual, the natural life will resist and defy the life of the Son of God in us and will produce continual turmoil. This is always the result of an undisciplined spiritual nature. We go wrong because we stubbornly refuse to discipline ourselves physically, morally, and mentally. We excuse ourselves by saying, well, I wasn't taught to be disciplined when I was a child. Then discipline yourself now. If you don't, you will ruin your entire personal life for God. Oh my God, it gets so harsh there. But he's right? Then discipline yourself now. If you don't, you will ruin your entire personal life for God. God is not actively involved with our natural life as long as we continue to pamper and gratify it. But once we are willing to put it out in the desert and are determined to keep it under control, God will be with it. We will then provide wells and oasis, I think there's a misspelling there, and fulfill all his promises for the natural. See Genesis 21:15 through 19. Now, I'm not going to go through those passages in Genesis. Roy puts up here, ego equals edge, natural equals ego equals edging God out. Oh my gosh, that is good. That's good. Thank you for that. That is also very. I mean, where are you guys, right? Roy, maybe we should get you on a conference call when I'm going over these devotionals with Hedia, because I've talked about this a lot. I am an infant when it comes to understanding God's word, the Bible, the passages and how they connect, whether we're listening and reading Genesis, which is referenced in this passage, and what is the other one? Galatians, right? Galatians 4:22, and then of course Hedia goes, well, you need to look at this one too, and she, off the top of her head, she knows where to go in the Bible to interconnect and to bring in more information on the subject matter, which then begins to truly make sense as to what this is talking about. Because again, I am an infant and not always, and again, this is why I do these things, because it helps to talk them through and to talk to all of you as you bring in more information that helps me understand. And as I go through life, trying to listen to God's word, to be active in changing my life, in a way that pleases God, and being just an overall better father, and again a partner to Hedia as things progress, to being a better person to my assistant who I work with on a daily basis, and being more just being more of a leader on many occasions, which I fail constantly, but I'm getting better at that kind of stuff to the clients that I serve. Everything, right? And this is the great part about the message I'm going to share from last night with Jack Hibbs, is that he talks about this very thing, about who we are out there, not just in our homes, not just when we're by ourselves, not just when we're in relationships, because I talked yesterday about when we're by ourselves, right? How important it is to still be a godly and a man of God when you're by yourself. But now, as we're moving into in the natural, how we are in the natural is to what it is that we are showing people, what it is that we are demonstrating to people as a Christian becomes even more important. And I think what Roy put up here, natural equals ego equals edging God out, is what people see. Your presence. Are you going to show? And again, I'm going to use the ego. Are you going to be use your ego and pretend that you're this person that you're not? Or are you going to be truly a man of God and have that be the thing that people know about you? Because sometimes, and I can tell you that one of the reasons why I wasn't probably a Christian and wasn't following God and not going to church is because I didn't want to be one of those people. I didn't want to be one of those Christians, right? All those goody two shoes and a wimp and a wuss, right? I didn't want to be that. I wanted to be the party animal. I wanted to be the strong guy. I wanted to be the tough guy. I wanted to be the guy first through the door on a SWAT deployment with my K9, which is by being in K9, we were the first guys through the door, into the room where there was the active shooter still shooting and yelling and screaming. I wanted to be that guy, right? It would have helped to be a Christian during those periods of time, right? It would have been much better and for my soul overall if I was to die going, right? It would have been much better to be a Christian, but I didn't want people to think I was a wuss. And so I wasn't a Christian. I didn't want to be a Bible thumper, right? I didn't want to be that guy. It is way different now. I mean, and again, previous to meeting Hedia and going to church and meeting Jack Hibbs and having my son show me what it's like to be a Christian by walking up and giving his life to Jesus Christ, by looking at him as an example of what a 14-year-old boy can teach me about being a man was amazing. And it literally changed my life. And then later on in line at church, I meet Hedia. And now she's teaching me so much about being a Christian, about those things I don't know. But I've realized that I'm probably more manly now than I was when I was trying to be a man. Right. And it is just, it is just crazy, the change in my life. And Robert, I did look at your message last night. I just need a moment. I have like 3 or 4 people I got to call. And Robert, or actually give maybe even an audio message back to Robert. And Robert, I'm glad you're on and reminding me again. I've got a list of people that I got to return messages to. It's not that you're not important. Yesterday, after I got done, we went and bought a Christmas tree. We had service yesterday. I had 5 kids. I had 5 kids here, and we were decorating trees and a whole bunch of stuff and got extremely busy. And again, did not get the reaching out to people that I would want to get reached out. So I just wanted to acknowledge Robert, who's on right now, who's being very patient with me. But as I go on this walk, it is that guy that I used to be, that it's so hard to shed. It really is hard to shed. I'm not lying to you. It is not hard. It is not hard reading the Bible. It is not hard doing these devotionals necessarily anymore. I'm learning so much, but this monkey that's on my back, known as Andy Falco Jimenez or Andre Brian Falco Jimenez, whoever it is that you know me as, that I still have on of the past, is still there, and it's a strong magnet to be drawn back into, because it was in some ways it was a little easier, right? It's a little easier to be a goofball. It's a little easier to live a life of debauchery. That's a little bit easier. Being a man of God is not for, I almost said pussies. It's not for wimps. That would not be very Christian. It's not for wimps. Being a man of God is not for unmanly men. Being a man of Christ, Right. I'm not talking about being a woman of Christ, obviously, because that's a completely different story. Will never know what that's like. Hopefully, I know, I know for sure as I walk in this new on this new path. Right. I've been walking along the path. I've walked across the path. I've walked across the path a couple times, right? And sometimes I thought I was on the path when in fact I was walking near the path or kind of like at a distance at the path, kind of like the voting observers, the GOP voting observers. I was like 100 yards away, going, I can't see who is that. Is that a signature? I can't see. That's how far away I was from the path of walking to God, with God, and so I just want to share with you that I'm telling you that that it's more that it's more challenging of my masculinity and just being a man and a bravery. That's the thing, and that I'm trying to look at is that because sometimes it challenges my bravery to walk in the path and in the footsteps of Jesus Christ and God, in the sense that I'm trying to learn from God and be more like God. I will never be like Jesus. I will never be him, but trying my best to walk in his path on this path with him has been a challenge, and it's not for the weak of heart. It can be very, very challenging. And so what I want to share with you is, I got to take this down here as we're talking here, is a part of the message last night. You'll see it pop up here in just one second as I'm preparing, checking the box that says share audio. So I know that I did that. I'm saying it out loud so that it can actually trigger in my head that I actually checked the box. I will bring up the message here. I'm going to extend it out. And what I want to do is preface this a little bit before I go live. And that is, or go with the video. And that is that Jack Hibbs, prior to being a pastor, from what I understand, he worked in a laboratory in Newport Beach, and they dealt with blood and guts and some other stuff. So that was his business before he began, opened up the church to the extent where he had to go full time into being a pastor with Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills. I believe he had already started like a ministry or maybe even a Bible study that would eventually turn into Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills. But in the corporate world, prior to being full-time pastor, he was working as a member of I don't know if he was a scientist or working as an assistant in a laboratory, and that's where he was working. And what he begins to talk about is that he really enjoyed being a Christian man in the corporate world because it challenged him. And I think this is an important message. It's about 3 minutes, so please bear with the length of this particular message. But I think it's an important one, and I would not do it justice if I simply tried to tell you about it. I think it's important to hear from Jack on this particular subject matter. So listen to what he has to say, and then we'll come back and I'm going to remember to mute my mic also. All right, here we go. Let me go ahead and mute my mic.
Argumentation on this point. Before we look at that, I think there should almost be a label of warning, maybe across our foreheads, or maybe better yet, over our ears. There should be like a red strip of tape, warning, because whatever we allow into our ears will affect us and influence us. Whatever you and I allow into our eyes will affect us, influence us. And you allow influences, you and I do. We do that naturally. We're designed to do that. And whoever or whatever you allow in will affect you. Listen, the book of Proverbs tells us, can somebody pick up fire and hold it to their chest or bosom, it says, and not be burned? Well, you'd say that's impossible. You cannot pick up fire and bring it into your chest without being burned. And that same book of Proverbs tells you regarding worldly thinking or carnal thinking. You can't take it in and have it not affect you. Why? Because you and I have a will that is influenced. My heart goes out to so many of you who, like Lot, you battle every day in your workplace. Unbelievable exposure. And I don't know why I'm not in that world. I used to be. The corporation I came from, when I resigned from that to do this church, I actually loved being in that kind of a world. I don't know what about you, but I loved being the Christian. Oh, he's the Christian. You know why I loved it? Because it kept you on your toes. And even, I remember one time, in fact, you'll remember this day, we were in a experiment. We were doing a lab experiment, and had a bunch of blood and guts and stuff on the table, and we were all gowned up. And remember the Whittier Narrows earthquake? And that earthquake hit, but we were in Newport Beach, but our building was a lab built on rollers, on springs. The lab was motion sensitive, so they had engineered factors out of that lab because movements, vibrations could really mess things up. But that earthquake was good. I mean, I'm speaking as a Californian. It was a good one. It wasn't a wimpy one that you read about on your app. You just had an earthquake. No, I don't think so. No, this one was, whoa, look, we're having an earthquake. And the water lines broke overhead and started coming down. It was a real one. And right in the middle of that experiment and that earthquake, there was the lead engineer, the lead doctor on this thing, and he was standing there and he was telling a dirty joke. And the earthquake hit, and the next thing out of his mouth, I'll never forget, he said two things. Somebody pray! Jack, pray! And I'll never forget that. Influences. Everything influences us for the good or for the bad. And as believers in this world, we've got to have that standard of being an armor bearer, as it were, of the kingdom of God, but also a soldier and one that is wrapped in the armor of God. And we're out in that world deployed. Again, I often tell you how C.S. Lewis writes in Mere Christianity that we have been deployed into enemy-occupied territory because Satan is here trying to steal this and you back.
That last part was really is one of the things that hit me from last night's message. And it's so funny because Hetty and I, you may have saw us there in the front row. I hate that shot, and I'm always in the front row, and you always see my yarmulke that I call it in the back, my bald spot. As the camera comes out, sometimes I'm right on that camera shot, and I hate it. But we were there last night, and after I'm driving home from the message last night, she says, wow, that was straight out of, what he was talking about was exactly what you were talking about on your Facebook Live yesterday. And then, of course, we read today's devotional and we go, there it is again. It's talking about the will, the natural. And I said, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that Jack is actually watching my Facebook Lives and then making his messages based on my Facebook Lives. I'm not going to say anything to him, but I really think that that's what he's doing. Which is not true. We know that. But there, what he said at the end, remember what I said earlier, that being a Christian man, and again, even a Christian woman, in a similar way, is not for, if you're going to be truly walking and sharing your faith in either the way that you act, the way you talk, the things you choose to do with friends after work, whether you decide to go to, the strip club, or you decide to go to Bible study, whether you decide to partake in a particular kind of joke. And again, one of my weaknesses is that I tell off color. Is that the phrase? Off color jokes. That is just, it's in my, I've done it for so long. I can, and I will learn to kind of harness that the best that I possibly can. But again, that is the battle, and it's weakness, right? I show weakness all the time in those areas, whether it's, with friends or even when my kids, we can get into some off-color jokes, and it's not easy. But when he talks about being a soldier, wearing the armor of God and being a soldier, it is just that, is that when you are out in public and you are demonstrating and showing yourself, and people begin to know that you're a Christian, they're going to be identifying you with that. And every time you show weakness, every time you show that you have weakness, or that you're hypocritical in some aspect, they're going to call you out on it. And you're going to have to answer not only to to God, but in some ways you're going to have to answer to yourself, your natural, and say, hey, you have to do better. Not to them, right? You may, say, you know what, you're right, I probably shouldn't have said it. But that's not the important thing. And that's one of the things, and I'm going to end on, I think I'm going to end on this one thing. I love watching these numbers. That's one of my favorite things, is these numbers go up really high, and depending on what I'm talking about, the numbers come back down again and go up and go high again. And that viewers, the numbers of people viewing. But this, oh shoot, I was talking about how you become this person. And I know what it was. And so the difference over the last 25 years, and I may have spoken about this before, but when it wasn't but maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and then more recently, even again, and being around Hedia and some of the discussions we have, it's become more clear, is that in the past, and I'm trying to think exactly how we were talking about it today, because it really was very clear earlier today, is that in the past, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, when I was very involved in the church, in the men's group, and then I became one of the, I would say, somewhat of a leader, because I was teaching Men of No Regrets on a fairly regular basis, sometimes for a couple days in a row, or I would be called to speak at a men's retreat in Catalina Island, or at the Friday men's group. They would say, Andy, could you speak next week on something? And so I would come in and I would speak about God or some subject matter, about marriage, about being a man in Christ and that kind of stuff. And I would read these messages and talk about what's important about understanding it. And I think I was clear, and I think that I think what I was saying was true. Based on biblical teachings and what I was being taught and Men with No Regrets. And I was passing on the information, but I wasn't, because you can speak about stuff. And I talked about this yesterday. Paul Byer was on yesterday. Also, we talked about how you can teach ethics, but not be very ethical. Right. And so with Hedia and I, we were talking about it today, is that there's a huge difference in, again, walking alongside the path as a Christian, the Christian path. Here's the Christian path, and walking over here, right? There's a huge difference. And then there's the other part where I was going to church with my ex-wife, and one of the reasons why I stopped going to church is because she only wanted to hold hands at church, because of course she wanted to give the impression to all of her friends that we were a happy couple, and then going to church, right? And then dressing up, holding the Bible, reading the Bible, singing the songs, right? You can do all of that, but not be Christian. You can do all that and not be a person of God. And you can be fooling yourself. You can be thinking, this is what I'm doing. I'm a Christian. I'm singing the songs. I'm going to church. I'm holding hands with my wife, but then we never touch each other after church. We never acknowledge each other. We never talk nicely to each other. But in church, we look like a lovely family walking in with our 4 little children, right? and we look very quick. And I'm teaching men's retreats, and I'm teaching it at Bible studies, and I'm leading Bible studies, and I write a book called Walking with God and a Dog. I can do all those things, but yet never be in Christ, never be a man of God, because it's all for show and it's not for me. And so much of my walk, and I'm going to finish again, I'm going to try to finish with this, is that much of my walk with God before was to try to improve my marriage. It was it was because I wanted to try to please this woman who I was struggling in a relationship with, to show her that I was a man of God. I was trying to do all these things to show other people or to improve on some situation, but never really being a man of God. If that's you, then you know what I'm talking about, that you are doing it because of something. I want to go to church because I have cancer. I want to go to church and sing and raise my hand during the songs because I want God to heal me. I want my wife, my girlfriend, my fiance, I'm going because I want her to believe that I'm a man of God, right? All those things are maybe some ways we get started, but unless we really are, what the devotional says, I'm going to try to find one passage here. I may not be able to do it quickly here, but here it is. But once we are willing to put it out in the desert, that is our natural, that is our sinful self. Once we are willing to put it out in the desert and are determined to keep it under control, God will be with it. He will then provide wells and oasis and fulfill all his promises. And then this other part here is actually, I'm going to go up. We go wrong because we stubbornly refuse to discipline ourselves physically, morally, and mentally. We excuse ourselves by saying, well, I wasn't taught to be disciplined when I was a child. Then discipline yourself now. If you don't, you will ruin your entire personal life. Until I discipline myself now to be a man of God, until I discipline myself to read his word, until I discipline myself to pray, until I discipline myself not to be the sinful person that I was in my past, I will never be a man of God. Because I'm just I'm just being a jackpot. I'm just looking for jackpot Jesus. Thank you, Hedia. Hedia came on. We had this guy. I thought that was awesome. Hedia, can you put your definition of that? Because I'm gonna ruin it by giving the definition that I recall. As you know, I don't recall things exactly the way that you put them, but you put it so perfectly. If you have time, I don't know if you have time or what you're doing right now. You may be driving, unfortunately. But jackpot Jesus, where you're kind of putting in the coins, hoping that you're going to get the jackpot, right? You're putting in. Actually, I was putting in slugs. I wasn't putting in quarters, right? I wasn't putting in nickels and dimes. I was actually putting in slugs. Like I'm gonna fool Jesus with these slugs, and then he's gonna send me to heaven and give me the jackpot. All right, I may have even made this thing better. Is that I was not even putting in coins to get the jackpot and pulling the lever and hoping at some point I was going to get that jackpot. I was putting in slugs, hoping that that God was gonna go, yeah, well, he tried. He was close. He was walking alongside. He wrote a book, for God's sake. He was teaching at men's retreats, but he never got rid of that sinful self. That I wasn't taught to be disciplined when I was a child. Then discipline yourself now. I love it what he says here, what Oswald says here. Then discipline yourself now. If you don't, you will ruin your entire personal life for God. Because I'm putting in slugs and looking for the jackpot Jesus, following Jesus to get things, not because you love him, right? And that's what I was doing. I was trying to save my marriage. I was trying to be this pretend couple as we held hands. And again, I think I mentioned it, that I can't go to church. I think there was some realization, now that I look back, there was some realization that I was fooling myself. I was trying to fool others. And I was even trying to fool God, that I was this Christian man in a Christian relationship and as a Christian couple, as a Christian mother and father, when in fact we weren't. And not living a life that was worthy of God. But I am now. Right. I understand it now. I realize it now. I feel it more now. And I want you to understand when we're going through these devotionals, and I hope that this message is coming across, even with the few that are still watching, that is important, that we can run across the path. We can run alongside the path on our walk with God and not really be on the walk with God. And so that's what's important. And I cannot wait to come back on with Hedia as she brings her knowledge of more in-depth story about Abraham and Ishmael and Sarah and Hagar and who else? Isaac, if I didn't say his name before, and all of that. That was really fascinating to hear some of the in-depth discussion we had about that. So Hedia and I will come on when we can fit it into all the stuff that's going on. This is, by the way, I'm going to make a statement that I've not made publicly ever. I've made the opposite public. Like, I have never really enjoyed Christmas. As long as I can remember, there may have been one or two Christmases as a kid that I enjoyed Christmas, probably when I was 5 or 6 or 7. But after that, since then, Christmas has always been a headache. It's always been stressful, especially as you become a parent and you're going through these stages of life where you don't get along with your spouse and you're going through divorce, and we have separate households where the kids are having 2 Christmases, and and a whole bunch of stuff goes on. And Christmas for me has always been stressful, and I really do hate. I have in the past hated the holidays as time has gone on. But This Christmas is already amazing. This Christmas is so much better. And you're saying, but Andy, it's 2020. Andy, but it's COVID-19 time. This is like the most horrible time in our country. No, it has actually been one of the best years ever. 2020 has been the best. But Andy, you had COVID-19 and we're in the hospital. It has been it has been one of the best years ever. 2020 has been the best year, one of the best years ever. That also is going to translate to one of the best holiday times, Christmas times ever. Well, I have a Christmas tree for the first time in many years with lights on it, and we're going to put, and we have even a couple ornaments on it. Hetty and I'm going to put up some pictures. We went out together with the kids and we went and bought this Christmas tree, brought it home. We got presents already under the tree, which I would never have presents under the tree. And if I even had a tree until Christmas Eve morning when I went shopping on Christmas Eve. That is how I rock and roll. This is like crazy that we have presents and it's, what is it, the 10th? December 10th, and there's already Christmas presents under the tree. This is going to be one of the best Christmases ever. I hope that by bringing these devotionals to you, that motivates some of you to get deeper in your relationship with Jesus Christ and God and the Holy Spirit, and bringing your relationship closer to where you're actually walking on the path. If you're like me, where you've walked alongside it, you've crossed it, you're looking for that jackpot Jesus, or playing jackpot Jesus, that this will begin to change for you too. It has for me. This has been a great year for me in this walk. And I'm just hoping for the best for all of you. And I hope that in some way, some of these messages motivate you. If you did not see Jack's message last night in its entirety, I put the link in the comments. And so you should have it. You can watch it and watch the messages in its entirety. The entire message is fantastic when it comes to this subject matter. And of course, he does a much better job. And of course, he's not watching my lives and then preparing his message. But it is really funny how we can kind of be in the same, again, I think that in many ways, and all of you probably feel this too when you go to church, like, how did they know that I was struggling with it? How did the pastor know to talk about this today? That happens all the time. All right, my friends, I love you guys. And again, thank you for your patience with the technology issues I've had for the last couple of days. I'm really not sure how to explain all this. That was really funny with the intro. I'm going to go out with the outro, which is the same as the intro, by the way. All right, my friends, I love you guys. God bless, and I hope you have a blessed day. We're going to have the best Christmas ever. This is going to be the best holiday. I want you to make the holidays and Christmas the best holiday ever, the best Christmas ever, in spite of COVID-19, in spite of our government, in spite of the elections, in spite of everything that's going on. Make the holidays and Christmas the best ever. Find a way to make that happen. Whatever it takes, make it the best ever. Get in God's word and do better and be better when you're in the natural. All right, my friends, I love you. God bless. Take care. Bye.